Okay, perfect. I think we can get started. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our session, Bridging the Gap Between Campus, City, and Community. In this session, we will be talking about how our institution, Wilfrid Laurier University, has practiced a model of social change using multiple layers of partnerships to promote mindful engagement in the process of co-creation and collaboration in community-centered courses. So my name is Durga Subendran. I'm in my 4th year of the Political Science program, and my role in C3 Innovation Lab Students Association is Director of Events.
Hi, my name is Jenna. I'm also in my final year of Global Studies at Wilfrid Laurier University, and my role in the C3 Innovation Students Lab Association is one of the co-presidents.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kira Quarrington-Craig. I'm also a 4th year Global Studies student and community engagement student, and I am the other co-president.
And hello, everyone. My name is Heather Montgomery. I am a practitioner in residence within the Faculty of Arts at Wilfrid Laurier University. And my role is really to bring a community voice into the faculty and provide support around community engaged experiential learning. And I really kind of bring from my background in the nonprofit sector. So I'm not an academic, I'm a community practitioner that is situated within the Faculty of Arts to support both curricular and co-curricular programming for students engaged in community-based learning.
Awesome. So before we begin, I'm just going to briefly go over what this presentation is going to look like. So we're going to start with land acknowledgement and then move into what C3 Innovation Labs is and the different course offerings that we have at Laurier. Then you will hear about some student experiences in the courses. So 3 of us will talk about that. And after, we're going to really focus on the C3 Innovation Lab Students Association and how that contributes to our values of co-creation between different actors and bridging the gaps between campus, city, and community actors. Finally, at the end, we're going to have some time left for some questions and some open discussion on how you can incorporate similar values on your own campuses. As well, throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them or put them up in the chat. We're open to hearing them. So now I'm going to pass it back to Heather for our land acknowledgement and the introduction to C3 Innovation Labs.
Thanks, Jenna. So we've heard this morning already a few people talking about land acknowledgements and the importance of recognizing the land on which we're situated, the land that nourishes us, sustains us, and acknowledging the first peoples who originally inhabited this land. Laurier is located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Neutral, and the Anishinaabe people, and it is part of a treaty, an indigenous treaty of the Dish with One Spoon, which recognizes that the land is shared in connection with each other, that the resources are shared, as well as the responsibility for the land and making sure that we're protecting it, we're taking care of it. I think it's really timely to be coming together at Ashoka online, virtually, from all of our different places in this sort of intellectual sharing of knowledge, and to be thinking about the land that we're each situated on. For our part, we're also part of the Haldeman Tract, and the Haldeman Tract was gifted to 6 Nations, or it's a treaty for 6 Nations that granted them the land 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. And this is really significant for us because right now only 5% of that land is actually held by 6 Nations. And so the rest of it has been developed and is predominantly settler communities. And so as we think about land acknowledgements, as we think about recognizing and acknowledging where we're situated, I think there's something that is also a call to action for us. So what does that mean? What does it mean for us to say that we're on the original territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people? What is our call to action around that? And for us in Canada, we have the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations around education. And part of that is looking at curriculum and how do we indigenize and decolonize our curriculum as a move towards reconciliation. So while our presentation today isn't about that, we wanted to, as part of this land acknowledgement, say that it's not just about stating that we are here situated on this land, but it's also about saying, so what does that mean for us? And for us in C3IL, what that means is really taking a close look at our curriculum and saying, how can we integrate more Indigenous knowledge into our curriculum? How can we address issues of colonization within our curriculum? How can we bring Indigenous voices into our classrooms? And that's something that we're doing actively as a part of our commitment to reconciliation. In terms of our C3 Innovation Labs, so if we're thinking about, so what is C3 Innovation Labs? Who are we? What do we do? We are a group of people, faculty, staff, students, community partners at Laurier, and it's an interdisciplinary hub for experiential learning. It's housed within the Faculty of Arts, and it focuses on the themes of social innovation, social entrepreneurship, civic involvement, and community engagement. And we build relationships across sectors, both inside the university, but also external to the university with our cities, with our community partners, and with the private sector. We do this both through curricular and co-curricular programming. Today we're going to talk mostly about the curricular options that we have, as well as the Student Association, but we do also have a summer mentorship program for students as well. Our three C's, sometimes I forget that not everybody knows what our acronym stands for. So the three C's are the campus that we are at Laurier, the city in which we reside, and in our city is actually not dissimilar to Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we're twin cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, but we also have Cambridge as a tri-city. And then we have 4 townships as well. So we're kind of a blend of urban and rural within the region. And we think of our community as Waterloo region. So you might be in Kitchener, you might be in Waterloo, you might be in Cambridge, you might be in Wellesley, you might be in Woolwich, but we're all part of Waterloo region. And so when we think about these partnerships, we're talking about partnerships within that whole community across all sectors. There are 3 kind of key elements that ground our work, that are kind of driving principles for us. And these are partnerships, whether that be collaborative or co-creative partnerships, mindful engagement and impact, so understanding, our own positionality and our relationship with others, and how we are intentional about building those in equitable ways. And then also about blurring the lines between teacher and learner. I'm going to talk just a little bit about each one of those. So from the partnership perspective, we're a collaboration between departments, faculties, and community sectors. We have co-created programming with partners who are nonprofit organizations, with cities. We have joint programs between faculties. So cross-disciplinary learning is really a cornerstone of C3IL. This year, we're pretty excited that one of our programs actually has all of the faculties at Laurier represented, and students are coming to that program from 12 different programs of study. So we have, Faculty of Science, we've got the Faculty of Music, we've got the Faculty of Arts, we've got the Business faculty, as well as our college, our Luther College is there as well. And so that really breeds this wonderful sharing of ideas and philosophies from a broad spectrum of disciplines. So internally, we have this cross-faculty, we have students, faculty, and community partners all coming together. We also have specific partnerships with our cities, so the City of Kitchener, the City of Cambridge, and the City of Waterloo. We have co-programming with all of them. We have a very strong relationship with a grassroots organization in downtown Kitchener that we have co-developed curriculum for one of our major options with that partner. And then through the private sector as well, with local social entrepreneurs, business people who act as mentors for our social entrepreneurship program. When we think about mindful engagement and impact, we're really thinking about how do we break down the hierarchies and the power differentials? How do we understand the impact of our presence in places, spaces, and structures within our community? And always trying to bring in more diverse actors and creating opportunities for equal voice and opportunities for joint decision making, which, as you can imagine, isn't always easy when you're talking about very different kinds of organizations and systems. All of our programming have either as sort of immersive placements or major capstone projects that are done in conjunction with these other partners. And everything we do is grounded in praxis. So this integration of experiential and academic knowledge. And students really develop this reflective practice of constantly asking, you know, how is what I'm learning in the classroom impacting my experiences in the community, and how is my experience in the community impacting my understanding of the literature? Finally, this blurring of lines between teacher and learner. I'm not sure if anybody was at Agatha, Misha, Marcin, and Roland's session this morning, but they talked about how change-making education requires us to think about the rules, roles, and relationships that we can shift to have greater impact. And this is certainly an important aspect of C3IL. So for example, from a rules perspective, classes aren't always situated in the classroom. For one of our options, they're never in a classroom. They're always in community. Professors don't stand. We sit in a circle. If we think about the roles that different players take on, you know, the classes are very student-driven. It's student-driven conversation rather than professor-delivered lectures. And the programming is also very significantly influenced by students. If we think about relationships, we've created this environment where students become teachers and teachers become learners, and community partners become teachers and mentors. So that gives you just a little bit of a flavor of the kind of overarching philosophy, values, and principles of C3IL. And I'd like to turn it over to Jenna now, who can tell you a little bit more about the curricular programming that's offered through C3 Innovation Labs.
Thank you. So now, as Heather said, I'm just going to quickly talk about the three main options that are offered through C3 Innovation Labs. So as was mentioned, these are unique because they're options that are open to all students from a variety of programs and faculties. The first one that we have is the social entrepreneurship option. So in the social entrepreneurship option, students get the chance to study social enterprises around the world. They learn the fundamentals of developing a social venture, and then in their final year, they take on launching their own social enterprise in the capstone course of the option. These classes involve active and engaged learning, and the courses also involved site visits in collaboration with local social enterprises and innovation hubs, where students can build connections and learn about the different models and business plans of local organizations. The next option that we have is the community engagement option. So in this option, students get to immerse themselves in downtown Kitchener, which is just one of the nearby cities by the university. This option is comprised of 3 courses that were co-created with Laurier and the Working Center, which is a nonprofit organization in Kitchener. The courses that make up this option allow students to discover the city through walking. So some of the classes that I took, half the class would just be walking around the city. And we would just be learning about the city and about the area and about different concepts just by walking around and seeing it in person. This option also allows students to explore different community engagement practices. Students get to engage with different community partners and nonprofit organizations, and they even have to partake in a placement with a partner organization as a part of a course requirement. Finally, the students do also complete a capstone project with a community partner in order to help address a local issue through community engagement consultations. Finally, the last option that is within C3 Innovation Labs is the capstone in urban sustainability. So this final option in this course, students, it's a year long, and they undertake a consultation with the city of Cambridge. So that's the third city that is kind of in the area of Laurier. And in groups of like 4 to 5, students must try to resolve an aspect of urban planning. So this can involve an assessment of downtown streetscapes or taking part in heritage mapping. And then finally, at the end of the course, students do a final presentation to the city, and the winning group gets a cash prize and has the option to further work on their project with the city of Cambridge. So that was just kind of a brief overview of the 3 main options that are provided within C3 Innovation Labs. So these can be added on to students' programs in order to enhance their degree. And so now we're just going to move on to specific experiences that students have had in these options. And so to begin with that, we're going to have Thurka talk about her experiences in social entrepreneurship.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jenna. I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal experience taking the capstone course in social entrepreneurship and how I use my background in all the other social entrepreneurship courses in the process of launching my very own social enterprise. And then lastly, I'll talk about what I was able to take away from the course in the end. So in my first year of university, I was in the economics program and took a management option where I was exposed to business concepts and even designing and developing in groups a business enterprise. For various reasons, I decided to switch out of the economics program and into the political science program, where I no longer continue the management option. Although I was always attracted to business courses and the creative aspect of designing a business idea. So when I came across the social entrepreneurship option in a meet and greet event, where I directly spoke to students currently taking the courses, I was drawn to the program almost instantly. One of the reasons was because these were entrepreneurship courses grounded in the arts, which generally at most business schools, there are only business and entrepreneurship courses offered in the business program. So what I found through taking the earlier social entrepreneurship courses was that I covered similar concepts such as the business model canvas or simply presenting a compelling pitch, which I did similarly in the management option. But in the social entrepreneurship option, there was much less lecturing and a more hands-on collaborative approach. Instead of having a lecture with a tutorial component, many of the social entrepreneurship classes were essentially seminar courses. They all took place in the room pictured on the left side of the slide, which doesn't look like a traditional lecture hall. It has flexible workspaces with movable desks, chairs, and whiteboards. What was inherently the core of the social entrepreneurship option was to dedicate time to work collaboratively on concepts within groups rather than working with a workbook individually. This really helps students create more of a community and support one another instead of having that sort of competitive relationship. So in the capstone course, Social Entrepreneurship, I used skills that were developed in prior courses to carry out field research after doing thorough analysis of gaps and problems to design innovative ideas for existing programs. After working on multiple group projects to test the process of conducting research, evaluating a problem, and coming up with a solution, I designed a venture individually in a topic I was passionate about. So on the right side of the slide, where there is a report cover of a business plan, that is part of the process of developing my very own social enterprise called TRIG. TRIG is a social venture that aims to improve transparency and good governance, especially in managing the public health sector in developing countries, through developing an innovative system that captures citizens' voices and feedback related to the public service they receive in these contexts. Not only was I able to develop a social enterprise in an area that I was passionate about, although I was able to pursue designing the initial stages of the venture, which I hope to implement on a global scale in the future. So week after week in our capstone social entrepreneurship class of 10 students, we would update one another on the progress of our venture and help each other out, whether through moral support or providing a network. And we became a community of student innovators where we were comfortable enough to share our challenges as well as celebrate our successes. So that was my personal experience in one of the C3IL course offerings. And now Jenna will share her experience.
Thank you. So the experience that I'm going to be talking about today was actually a consultation experience between in two of my classes within C3 Innovation Labs. So oftentimes the connection and interaction between the different options that we have at Laurier doesn't occur. But when they do, there are some interesting outcomes, as I saw. So I've taken both social entrepreneurship and community engagement courses. And last year, for me, these courses overlapped through a consultation project with the city. So in my community engagement capstone course and in my social entrepreneurship course that was titled Social Innovation in the City, I took part in a complete streets consultation with the city of Kitchener. So in this is the experience that I'm going to talk about today. And in this experience, I was involved in a group project to help the city of Kitchener engage in community consultations for their Complete Streets project. And this was done through the format of City Studio. So City Studio is an innovation hub where city staff, students, and the community co-create experimental projects. This really helps students gain experiences and apply their knowledge that they're learning in class. So our project was specifically focused on complete streets in Kitchener. So complete streets, just to give a little background, are streets that meet the needs of people of all ages and abilities and provide a wide range of transportation options. So our goal for this consultation project was to gather information about the experiences and the needs of different groups in the community. These projects that I engaged in two different classes involved student-led consultation between two groups of 4 to 5 students from one social entrepreneurship class and one community engagement class. We conducted research about the topic, developed online and in-person surveys, and in-person workshops in partnership with our city representative, who was leading the project at the city level. Specifically, the workshop activities that you can see in these images on the screen involved of 3 different sessions, and we went and did these workshops at 3 different locations. So we completed these workshops at an elementary school, a retirement home, and with a downtown community group. The first session was more of like an introductory session where we did like a walkabout around the area where we were thinking of implementing complete streets. The second session involved the complete streets game. So the picture on the right there is a little example of the game that we used. It's just a bunch of magnets where participants could design the street that they want and really identified all the different amenities that they wanted. And then the third session was really more about designing the street and identifying the needs and the most important aspects of the street of each community group. So the main goal, as I said, with this consultation was to determine the priorities of each group and their experiences currently, and then provide recommendations for the city and backing up with our findings and then submitting that as a final report. So in the end, at the end of these 2 courses, we developed a final report that went to the city. And then in September, a couple of us actually got the chance to go to City Hall as a delegation to support the implementation of complete streets and further support the claims that we made in our report. So that was generally our experience. And what I found really interesting about this experience was so many different partnerships that came out of this experience. So not only was it partnerships between students and people in the city, but it also involved partnerships between the 2 classes, because usually there's a clear separation between social entrepreneurship and community engagement. The connection that I specifically had to both of these classes really gave me the ability to coordinate tasks and help complete the consultation and bring them together in a final report for the city. For me, it was especially an interesting experience because these 2 different classes had a very different approach to the problem and to what we were supposed to do. Each class had different processes and different assignments that we had to complete for coursework, but then we were also both trying to reach the same end goal for the city. So in the community engagement class, this course was a lot about connecting with the community, providing supports to vulnerable populations. And so the approach we used for this project was really based on community interactions and consulting with those vulnerable populations that will really identify what is needed on the streets. In contrast, the social entrepreneurship class involved very in-depth research and observations. We did more interviews. We consulted with the community, but then after our consultation, we completed empathy mapping. And then we did our mashup of ideas to try and think of, how to solve these issues. And then we went back to our research and had to try and validate the recommendations that we were making. So although the 2 different processes that we used were a little different, in general, what I found very surprising was the results that we had were pretty much the exact same. So it made it really easy to consolidate in a final report and give it to the city because we were both asking for the same things. So finally, to sum it all up, the impact of this experience on me personally has really been long lasting. I find myself constantly going back and thinking about it. One of the biggest challenges, however, that we did face was just the coordination of the two different classes. There were different professors that were running these classes, different assignments. There were also 8 or 9 students that were part of this project. And so it's a lot of people to coordinate. And sometimes, you know, that coordination was not easy. There was some miscommunication. And so this project was met with difficulties, and it wasn't just all, you know, smooth sailing. But I think that those difficulties really opened my eyes to the reality of these kind of consultations that happen in our cities every day. And being students and being in charge of this project was really different and really eye-opening. And it gave us it made us a lot more passionate about what we were doing, because we could see how what we were doing was going to have an impact on the city. We went to City Hall in September, a couple months after we submitted the assignment, and we could see that it was actually being implemented. Our recommendations were being used. And so that was just something really great to see. And it's something really great to just be able to say that I helped do that. I helped make a difference. This experience also really taught me how difficult it is to meet the needs of everyone. It made me more sympathetic and understanding to the changes that are going on around us every day, and especially during this time. Although there are changes that are happening that we may not feel that they're benefiting us, they may be needed for other people. And so that is continuing to be relevant every day, especially today as we are, you know, in an interesting situation that we're in. And so that's also something that has really stuck with me. And finally, these consultation projects that I engaged in really let me see how I can make a difference in the community. I can use what I'm learning in class and how I can apply it to my future and just truly make a difference. So that's my experience. We have one more experience that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to send it off to Kira, who's going to talk about her experience in community engagement.
All right, thanks, Jenna. So for mine, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my time in the community engagement option. So as we've mentioned before, the community engagement classes seek to connect students at Laurier with the surrounding city and community. Too often as students, we live in a bubble of our campus and immediate shopping options. This is definitely something that I experienced. This class was designed to break down these barriers and taught me a lot about the community that I'd already been living in for 3 years. As a part of the course, we had classes in coffee shops, community spaces, not-for-profit organizations, and City Hall. We also had the opportunity to take on a volunteer position with one of the community support spaces we learned about. Some of the options included a bike repair shop, community cafe, soup kitchen, a secondhand store, financial job support centers, and community gardens. I was assigned to a large soup kitchen in downtown Kitchener. The kitchen accepts donations from the surrounding community and uses volunteer support to prepare and distribute an average about 350 meals a day. I would spend 6 hours a day once a week, helping prepare, serve, and clean up after lunch. I learned a lot of valuable lessons there, and I'm just going to talk about a couple of them. The first and hardest lesson was the level of poverty and hardship so many people in my community were living in. It's easy to talk about vulnerable populations in the abstract in class, but it's completely different seeing interacting with people who quite literally had nothing. I saw the impact of alcohol and drug addiction, of homelessness, of mental health issues, and people trying their hardest to lead a life I couldn't have even imagined before. I also saw how much doing a couple hours every day could help someone who really needed it. Next, I learned the power of a conversation. I've been taught my whole life that the most important thing was to be productive. To me, when I walked into the kitchen, this meant using my time to cook, clean, organize, and serve as best I could. My experience there and my professors taught me, however, that the most valuable use of my time was to sit down and have a conversation with the people that I was there to learn about. I learned a lot from these people. I talked to a man who quoted Shakespeare to me. a woman who worked 2 jobs and was feeding 3 kids, and a variety of professional and volunteers from my local community who spent all day, every day trying to make a difference. The final thing I took away from this experience was how much community matters. It was obvious on my first day in the kitchen that there was a well-established community who congregated there. Everyone knew everyone else. There were leaders from their community and a system of interaction I did not yet understand. For people who had very little material goods, their community became the thing they relied on to survive. And I think this is an important lesson that I learned and that everyone can learn by spending some time with the people in their community that need the most. I learned more spending 6 hours a week in the community around my school than I have in any other class, and I would strongly encourage anyone listening to try and do the same.
Awesome.
I'm going to pass it back to Thurka to talk a little bit more about our Students Association that we've been working really hard on this year.
Yeah. So the Students Association was developed in hopes of drawing more student involvement in leadership roles and collaborative opportunities. One of the main goals of the C3IL Students Association was to get students more involved in the process of co-creation, which is the main value of C3IL at large. And as discussed earlier, C3IL is founded on co-creation. So here the whole relationship between professors and students is flipped to create a more engaging classroom and university experience. At Laurier, this is achieved through the co-creation of course content, C3IL values and missions between students, faculty, and staff. Just as professors evaluate students, students have the opportunity and are encouraged to evaluate teaching methods and concepts introduced in class. Whether part of the decision-making process of designing opportunities or simply fulfilling them, student participation is the fulcrum of achieving purpose and succeeding both as a program and as an institution. Students play a pivotal role in designing opportunities for community engagement, but are also the driving force that makes those opportunities a success. Since joining, I have personally participated in course development and strategy sessions. For instance, once a month, students, faculty, and professors involved in C3IL hold monthly professional development meetings and an annual C3IL strategy session. So the students' role in these meetings are to provide the C3IL student perspective. This is one way that C3IL attempts to equalize voices in the curriculum. As students who attend these monthly meetings, we speak from our own experience in the courses, and we're responsible for relaying any other concerns or input from the general student population. The Students Association specifically gives students these leadership opportunities within C3IL to participate in co-creation and engage in dialogue with staff and faculty to help further develop the programming. These students come from different programs and faculties, like mentioned earlier, so they also bring different perspectives and ideas for new partnerships for C3IL. This year on the Students Association, we have had students in global studies, political science, music, and communications. Although we don't represent all of the programs of all students in the courses, we bring a diverse set of experiences in the different options. Not only do we play a crucial role in planning events to create a more community feel among students in C3IL and spaces for interaction between students, faculty, staff, and alumni, but as Students Association, we aim to give students a voice in the programming and development of C3IL. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we accomplish our vision. The C3 Innovation Lab Students Association was created by a community of student innovators where we have been able to host workshops and connect with peers who are also interested in social innovation, as well as faculty to provide a network of individuals who strive to promote positive social change. The Students Association has been able to bring together students, faculty, alumni, and community partners by organizing an end-of-year showcase to display the projects students have worked on through the fall and winter terms. As a student club, we are able to leverage student and alumni funds to make this event possible. We connect with professors in order to gain student participation in presenting in the actual showcase, as well as attending the event. We also make this event open to all students, regardless of what program they're in. Within our community of student innovators, we have designed roles as found in traditional clubs, such as president or executives in marketing, logistics, or events, as a way to manage each aspect of our events. And to promote our program, we reach students directly through delivering class talks. And this is just generally done to first and second year students who start to think about options that they'd like to take. And we offer dynamic study spaces during open or office hours where students are able to ask questions about our program or simply use the space for group and individual work. We also host social events. So school can be stressful, but there are many ways to make it social and engaging, such as earlier this year, we had a movie night with a featured social activist film, and then a Q&A portion that followed. One of the larger events we put on annually is our C3IL Student Showcase, which Kira will be talking about in the upcoming slide.
All right, thanks, Thurga. So I'm going to wrap up our presentation today by talking a bit about our annual end-of-year showcase. This is an initiative started last year that aims to bring students from all three of our options together to show the wider community what we've been working on. We invite all of our C3IL students to participate in boothing as well as holding panels and mingling so they can learn from each other and get recognition for the incredible work they've done all year. When trying to connect people from the campus city and our communities, we realized a larger event like this was a great way to do that, while at the same time raising awareness for our program and getting future students interested. Last year, we had over 50 people attend, including many of our institution's senior staff and key stakeholders from the community. They had the opportunity to hear from our students and faculty, and we gained some important institutional and community support from this event. Unfortunately, this year we had to cancel the in-person event due to the global pandemic that's currently going on, but that has given us an opportunity to strengthen our social media presence. Instead of having an in-person booth and panels, we are reaching out to students currently enrolled in our programs and asking them to write a short summary of their project or venture for us to share on our social media. We are also looking at putting together a professional video sharing some of the incredible work completed throughout the year. If anyone's interested in seeing some of these, we encourage you to keep an eye on our social media options, which are also in the next slide. So that will end our formal presentation. I'd like to thank everyone who came in and listened today, and we'd like to open up the floor if anyone has any questions. You can either turn your mic and your camera on or just put them in the chat, and we'd be really happy to answer them for you. A minute. If nobody has any burning questions off the top, we had a couple of discussion questions that we'd like to hear from you guys about. The first one that we thought we could talk about a little bit was, what experiential learning opportunities have you engaged in, and how are they displaying, like how have they affected your academic experience?
Kira, maybe while people are thinking about their responses to that, we've just had a question about providing examples for equalizing voices. And I think that I'm happy to lead off on that one. I think there's a couple of different ways in which C3IL does this. First, we do think very seriously about co-creation and joint decision making. So I'll use the community engagement option as an example. So the curriculum for that option was developed jointly between a community partner, the Working Center in downtown Kitchener, and Wilfrid Laurier Faculty of Arts. And when I say that the curriculum was jointly created, I mean, they worked on curriculum development together for about 3 years. They put the new programming through Senate together. They also are ongoing partners with us. So every year, you heard Thurka talk about sort of an annual review of programming. Every year when we think about what the next year's community engagement option will look like, we come together in August, and there are faculty members there, there are students there, as well as our community partners. And together we decide, which of the learning outcomes are we actually achieving? Are they all still relevant? Are the texts still relevant that we're using in each of the courses? Are there other voices that we want to be bringing in? And that is, and again, it's a conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation. And those community voices have equal weight. So when we're thinking about texts, for example, our community partners might say, we just read this book as a community, and we think it really has some valuable insights that students would benefit from learning about. Then that becomes a discussion around the table about how do we integrate that text? And so that's just one example of community partner voices and equalizing that. I think another piece is really being intentional, as Thurka mentioned earlier. Well, actually, Thurka, Jenna, and Kira all mentioned the importance of having student voices at the table. And that's whether that's our, operational meetings or whether those are our strategy meetings. That student voices are really important. In the classroom, if we think about, so we think about community partners, we think about sort of structures, if we think about what happens in the classroom, these are, student voices are very prominent. The professor does not stand up and spend, 3 hours lecturing. The professor poses a question based on the literature, based on the experiences that students are having. And then it is the sharing of students through dialogue and through their own integration of what they're learning from the literature and what they're learning from experience, and how those two bodies of knowledge are coming together, that is actually the basis of the learning in the classroom. So that would be sort of my take on how we're really equalizing voices. That it's not just faculty, it's not senior administration, it's students, it's community partners, it's everybody on an equal playing field that are making joint decisions and having equal input into where our programming goes.
If I can add on to that, just from a student's perspective, in a lot of my classes, this professors would generally ask us after our classes, such as if we had a guest speaker, they would ask, was this experience useful for you? What did you gain from it? What could we do differently? And that's something that we do after all of our seminar classes. So throughout the semester, if we had 3-hour classes every week, we would be asked this question at the beginning of a class or at the end of a class. And this is generally just how all of our classes within the C3IL program go. I think we have a couple more questions on the side in the chat.
We do. We have a question here regarding whether we have any work published on the programming, and the answer is no. I'm sorry to say, we are working on that. C3IL is about 3, maybe 4 years old. I suppose I should probably know that more accurately. Yeah. But we're quite new. The social entrepreneurship option and the community engagement option in the CUSP programming have been running for a little bit longer. But this sort of coming together as a hub and as a network and bringing, building this energy at the university is a newer thing. And so right now we have a number of papers that are currently in the works. One of them will be delivering at Congress, that's actually about decolonizing the curriculum and indigenizing the curriculum. But there are also 3 other papers that are in the works. So maybe at the next Ashoka Exchange, we can share more about that. We're also really happy to have conversations offside. So, if you wanted to reach out to us and say, you talked about this, how do you make that work? How do you get that through the structures at the university, or how do you build those partnerships, or whatever? We're really happy to have those conversations after the exchange as well. And I'm sure there's somewhere for contact sharing.
Just right on the slide, actually, there's our little contact information on the bottom right. So feel free to email us, message us on Facebook, Instagram, and we'll definitely get those answers.
I think that covers the question. Measuring social impact of these initiatives in the community. So yes, in fact, we actually have one of the professors in the program has received a teaching fellowship grant. So they're currently doing research on the impact of the programming within the community and on students themselves. The other piece, I think that it comes into it is we did, on each of the programs, we've had formal evaluations done where we're looking at, so, are we sort of achieving what we said we wanted to achieve in terms of learning outcomes, in terms of engagement, in terms of value to community, and those pieces. Whether we're impacting, whether we're evaluating the actual impact of the various projects, that's a little bit more hit and miss, right? It really depends on the community organization that we're partnering with, because many of those initiatives are actually community led or community driven, or they're brought to us by the community to say, we're hoping you can work with us on this particular project. And so whether or not that impact is being measured is typically whether or not their project funding has resources allocated for that. And unfortunately, in the environment that we're in right now, funding for evaluation is, it's the thing that we all, it's the thing that everybody wants people to do, but it's also the thing that nobody's really willing to resource or fund. Well, not anybody, some funders do, but it really depends on the community organization whether that impact is completely measured. I see we have another one here about interactive learning between students, and about personal change within students. Thurka, Jenna, or Kira, would one of you be willing to take that question on?
Yeah, I can try to start us off, I guess. So for interactive learning between students, I would say that makes me think of a lot, at least my experience in community engagement. As we've kind of talked about, like the courses and the classes for community engagement involve just sitting around a table, the professor posing a question, and us just talking about it. And so the actual interactive learning between us groups of students was like definitely there. We were just talking about our own experiences in our placement, or how we saw or read something or understood a certain reading in a certain way, and how that is connected to our other courses or our experiences. And so like hearing from other students and their experiences and how their perspective on certain reading or a certain concept or a certain practice and what that's like, and how hearing that that's their perspective kind of like impacted my own perspectives within the class. And so it wasn't just, as we've said, like the professor telling us, oh, this is what it means, this is what you should take from it. Instead, it was more of like we were having discussions between each other, what everyone, thought things meant, and what that means in reality, how that can change, what's good, what's bad. We were all kind of taking that critical perspective to our readings and towards our placement, and using that to kind of gain a better understanding of our own experiences and of like our community engagement perspectives, as well, even with like, let's say the projects that we engaged in, like that for all of us students, like that was the first time we'd ever engaged in like a major project, whether it be through social entrepreneurship or our community engagement projects. That was like our first time. So it was definitely a learning curve for all of us students. And so like we would bring information and knowledge from our other courses or from our other experiences. We'd bring that into the project, and we would definitely be learning from each other. And we'd kind of have to figure out what works for us as a group, what's working for these other groups. Like I remember when I was working on my project for social entrepreneurship, there were two groups in the class, and we would go and talk to the other group and see what they were doing and what was working for them. And we'd kind of engage in the learning in that way, because like that's kind of just how it worked, since each project and each year is so different, that it kind of wouldn't be the same from year to year. So in your year, you would just have to figure it out as you went. That's kind of my experiences. I don't know if Kira and Thurka have different ones or other opinions, but yeah, that's kind of how I see it and saw it. So thanks for the question.
Most of pretty much what you said. I think one of the important things for me with the group discussions was the fact that everyone's backgrounds were so different. Like our class was 20, 25 students, and we had people from lots of different faculties, lots of different places in life, places internationally. So just the fact that we had the time and the space to really engage in that conversation, and we could take 3 hours and only address 3 questions. Like we really had the space and the time and the faculty support to get really deep into some issues that we were seeing in our placements or in our readings. And just having like the space to do that is something I really enjoyed in the program, and something that I miss, and I wish some of my other classes could integrate more into some of their teaching styles as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I said that I was in the political science program, and what C3IL courses kind of offer that the political science program doesn't is sort of that interdisciplinary lens, which when you're combined in a class with students from so many different options and programs, it's just really easy to hear the different experiences that they bring from each of their own programs. And it's as if you're getting a taste of each of those programs, because you're hearing about what these students' experiences are like, and you wouldn't hear that otherwise in another sort of course context. Because this isn't really like a lecture type, like we've been saying. It's more just collaborative. We're sitting in a circle. We're talking about our experiences, and in a way, it's really reflective, and it's a different kind of learning that you engage in. Yeah.
I may just jump on there as well, just with one final remark, and that is that from the instructor perspective, we see incredible transformation in students from their sense of their own positionality in life, what they're thinking about in terms of their future, and the way that they're thinking about their own agency. Often I think that students are placed on a trajectory of post-secondary education. I graduated high school, so now I go to university, and then after I graduate university, then I get the job, and we're programmed to kind of just set ourselves on that track. And through all of this engaged conversation, students start questioning assumptions, and they start questioning that trajectory, and sometimes they make changes. Sometimes they decide that actually they'd like to be on a different trajectory. And so what's really wonderful is to hear students say, this gave me the opportunity to question why I'm doing what I'm doing, and really evaluate what do I want to be doing and how do I get there, and believing that actually I have the agency to make those decisions myself, and I have the power to really create the future that I want to see for myself. And so for us, that's really exciting. I see we have.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt you, Heather, but you just reminded me of like that changing trajectory of kind of spoke to me, I guess. But taking community engagement specifically, like I'm in global studies, and my course is always focused on, other places in the world. Like I was in the international development stream looking at, places all over the world, and taking community engagement really kind of localized my perspective, I guess. And it saw how what I was learning in global studies, it was still very relevant, but like I could also apply it to local communities and to like places here in Canada. Like there are so many things that we can try to help make a difference with locally rather than looking outside the country. Like doing that is important as well, but community engagement kind of, I guess, broadened my perspectives and kind of pivoted what I was, seeing what I could do with my degree. And it just opened me up to different possibilities within like community development and community engagement locally. So yes, sorry to interrupt.
Heather, I think we have a question here for you. So regarding university credit recognition, what do you take into account when assigning our classes?
Sure. So if I understand the question, if I'm on the wrong line, just put something in the chat there. In terms of credit recognition, so these courses are curricular. So the social entrepreneurship courses, community engagement courses, and the capstone in urban sustainability. These are all 4-credit courses. So what happens is students add these onto a regular program. So for example, Thurka talked about being in political science, so her degree will be a degree in political science with the social entrepreneurship and community engagement options. The options, for example, there are some shared core courses between social entrepreneurship and community engagement. Courses get probably between, it's either a 0.5 or a full credit course. So for example, the CUSP program is a full credit. The capstone social entrepreneurship is a full credit, as well as the community engagement capstone is also a full credit. So you know, from that perspective, students are actually gaining, this isn't sort of extracurricular, students are gaining university credit for this. In terms of, in case the question is, how do we you know, evaluate credit for those community pieces, we actually have a matrix and an evaluation tool for the placement as well as the capstone projects, and we're just really clear about what the expectations are for students so that they understand how they're being evaluated in those pieces. So just a really quick example for community engagement, for the 6-hour-a-week placement that Kira was talking about, there are 2 aspects to that. Did the students, so one is an attendance thing, right? So did you get all of the hours? Were you, you know, did you show up on time? All of those good things. The other half of the grade comes from the depth of engagement within the project. So the community partners actually fill out an evaluation form that asks students, or that asks them how students engaged in the community. So did they come in and were they just sort of working by themselves but didn't actually engage in the community around them? Or were they very involved in the community around them? Were they you know, open to conversations with others? These are the kinds of questions that come in. And then based on that feedback, we provide a mark for that portion of the course. I hope that answered the question. I noticed that we have 2 minutes left, and I know that Ashoka is trying to keep us moving along. So I just wonder whether there are any final thoughts, Thurka, Jenna, and Kira, that you'd like to share with everyone about your experience with C3IL.
I guess I'll go first. I think I don't have any pressing things. I want to thank everyone for listening and engaging, and just encourage you to look a little further beyond your institution to see if there's any community partners that would really help. For me, the community part was the biggest thing that I took away from this program. So if you have any community partners that you could support or integrate into your classes, then I would highly recommend doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think students are always looking for opportunities like this. And so if it's a question of whether students are interested in these opportunities, I think the answer is always yes. So I think it's just aligning those different partners to try and bring these programs. Yeah. Thank you for listening again.
Same for me, kind of going off what Thurka was saying. Students are looking for these opportunities, and we have the ability to take on these projects, as we've kind of discussed and shown in our presentation. Like, we want to have these, you know, bigger roles. We want to have a say in, you know, the programming, and we have created our own students association to try and give more leadership roles to these students, because we see the potential and how it can make an impact on our campus as well as in our communities. So kind of giving those opportunities to students, or students themselves making those opportunities, is really beneficial. And so thank you for listening to our presentation. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or just want to chat. We're always here.
Yeah, just one last thing. Like we said, our showcase, we wanted to kind of do virtually. And so that's just going to be on Facebook or Instagram. So you can even follow some of the student projects that we've been doing throughout the year. And yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
attending our session, and we look forward to engaging with you virtually throughout the next day and a half.